Okay, so we are a generation that is allergic to waiting. An entire generation that's allergic to waiting. And it's not just like millennials or Gen Alpha, it's baby boomers, it's Gen X, it's millennials, it's Gen Z. It's probably gonna be worse for Gen Alpha and Gen Beta. Why? Because we've been learning that it's okay to be impatient. A lot of things happen instantaneously, and we've gotten used to this environment of fast results. Take a website that's loading, for example. How long do you wait before you start feeling frustrated and annoyed and decide to just rage quit and leave? It's happened before. Google in 2017 had not a survey, they did a research thing that said, when load times increase from 1 second to 5 seconds, the rate of people giving up and leaving that page altogether and abandoning their flow is 90%. For online shopping, if you are at checkout and you're ready to get your cart and get your items, if there is a delay by 100 milliseconds, that's 1/10 of a second, the amount of cost that is to a company, this is specific to Amazon, drops by 1%. 1/10 of a second in latency is costing 1% in sales from Amazon. And for a user, if even with the first time that your transaction fails for whatever reason, the likelihood of you never coming back to that company again to make a purchase is 43%. TLDR, we need things to work quickly, and we need things to work well. So that's where this 5-second rule comes about. What feels instant? The window of opportunity is around the 5-second mark. From a buyer perspective, what needs to happen in that 5-second, I think some of my animations got lost here, but that's okay. In that 5-second window, as a buyer, you tap. And then afterward, you wait. And you wait a little longer, and then it's done. And hopefully, within that 5 seconds, you get from tap to done pretty quickly. But there's a lot of things that happen under the hood. We're gonna try to break it down into 5 steps here. First, there's the initiation. Initiation is from the buyer's perspective. Then there's authorization, to ask, does this user have the appropriate credits? Does this user have the appropriate funds in order to make the purchase? There's the settlement piece. Is the payment logged somewhere in a ledger? Reconciliation, making sure that my books tie out with what is written in the ledger. And finally, confirmation, where we get this affirmation of payment completion. It works fine today, right? Like we're using credit cards just fine, Apple Pay, Google Pay. There's nothing wrong with it. Why complicate it with blockchain? Well, we complicate it with blockchain because right now the payments flow is entirely an illusion. Those 5 steps actually don't happen altogether in 5 seconds. We'll first talk about the perceived element of completion and the action that we see on a buyer's behalf, steps 1 and step 5. Step 5 in particular is a promise of payment. That receipt that you get, that confirmation of purchase, it is a promise because no funds have actually been transferred. Your credit card is the one that is maintaining balances. Merchants don't get funds until later on. For settlement and reconciliation, batching occurs. There's T plus 1, T plus 2, potentially T plus 5, 7, 10, depending on where your funds are being sent from and to. There's also pending transactions, and I'm sure we've all seen this on credit card statements where your recent purchase is still listed as pending. And then the authorization piece, are funds available? Right now, everything is credit-based. There's temporary holds, and there's also processing fees that either the merchant has to bear or you as a user bear because the merchant is passing those fees down to you. It's not the most efficient. So when we think about perceived finality versus actual finality, this is where blockchain, on-chain payments can actually make a relative difference. Not a relative difference, an actual difference. Where that specifically hits is in the middle 3 steps with authorization, settlement, and reconciliation, where blockchain provides a globally accessible ledger. You don't have to rely just on a singular bank's ledger. It's publicly available. There can be opportunities for privacy while also maintaining verification of funds on chain. There's the settlement piece, where you don't have to wait 2+2 anymore, reducing that latency to seconds. And then finality as final, as truly final. But on-chain payments needs a chain that is sufficiently fast as well. And in order for authorization, settlement, reconciliation, and confirmation to all occur within a span of 5 seconds, you need that element of speed, where there's no matching, there's no latency, no pre-funded pools, and money feels like it's moving in real time. All right, if on-chain's so great, where the hell is it? Why doesn't it exist yet? There's a few things that are holding us back, a few hurdles. I'm going to cover 3 primary areas, and I'm sure that there might be a couple more. But first and foremost, the chain needs to be sufficiently fast enough and sufficiently performant. So there's the speed, there's the scalability aspect, and there's also the reliability aspect. I'm sure many of us have heard this figure of Visa and MasterCard processing 65,000, I think, transactions per second, is it? Or it's a lot. They process a lot of transactions, and many chains today wouldn't be able to support them one-on-one. That's where batching comes into play. Then it also comes to the complexity of payment flows in general. You need a full stack. You need a full set of building blocks in order for a payment flow to actually come to fruition. There's on and off ramps. There's the stablecoin piece. Issuance of specific stablecoin assets themselves, potentially also card issuers, payment networks, so on and so forth. The last piece is also critical. You need merchants to be integrated and onboarded. And finally, someone's got to take the first step to actually making this come to fruition. And any change in technology, being the first mover, is absolutely terrifying. Many of us in this room are probably used to it. If we're builders, if we're in this space, we are used to being at the forefront of something new, novel, technology-oriented. That's not always true when we're dealing with merchants, when we're dealing with larger companies, corporates, conglomerates, institutions who are very familiar with things that feel safe and familiar. Tolerance for change is not always there. The other piece is also regulatory clarity. Are there things that can and cannot be done with stablecoins? Are there elements of privacy, and I forgot to put this on the slide, that need to be considered as well, especially for a publicly accessible blockchain? But finally, it's generally the first mover problem. Who's actually going to take the step of saying, you know what, I'm going to be the one to give a new type of flow, a new type of technology a chance? Personally, I feel like this is where we see a lot of the bottlenecks. How do we get from proof of concepts, which we've seen plenty of, to actually getting to utility in a long-term production manner? I'm going to talk about Monad, because obviously, Monad, for those of you who don't know, is a new EVM Layer 1 blockchain. It is performant. There's a lot of things that are being built on Monad for support of the payment stack, and we're also hoping to do big things. On the performant technology piece, we talked about things needing to be sufficiently fast and reliable, and I forgot what the other word is, but we'll start with the sufficiently fast part. The Monad blockchain has 400 millisecond block times. That's insanely fast. 2-slot finality, which also makes it sub-second finality, 800 milliseconds to get to finality. That is certainly less than the 5-second rule, which we need. Again, sufficiently fast blockchains are required because the longer it takes for a chain to be final, the longer the experience and the further you get away from that 5-second rule. The consensus mechanism for Monad, along with Raptorcast, which is block propagation, is also very efficient too. I wish I added more graphs and charts and flows here, so I will do that next time around because they're fun to see. But the consensus itself is actually a 50% improvement over typical BFT consensus mechanisms from 4 rounds to 2 rounds. All right, sufficiently scalable as well. Recently, there was a sustained load test on testnet of 12,000 TPS sustained. That doesn't mean blips. This doesn't mean that the blockchain can support one instance where there's 12,000 transactions in a single second. This is sustained load across 200 global validators. This is rather unprecedented. Also, accessible hardware specs. One of the biggest challenges of building a scalable blockchain is how it's actually run. Performant chains on consumer-grade hardware is a big challenge. But the specs that you see here are far less than like even the beefiest MacBook Pro. Like, this is a pretty standard setup. You can run a node, you can run a validator on a laptop that you buy from Costco. Also sufficiently reliable. There's the decentralized element. The 200 validators are spread across 6 different continents. The only continent that Monad does not have a validator in, can you guess? Antarctica. We'll wait for that day. 30 countries, 58 cities. There's also reliable gas fees. It's a different kind of base fee mechanism, so that there aren't a ton of swings throughout the day. Of when there's a ton of demand, prices still remain relatively normalized. So that way, merchants and businesses who are relying on on-chain transactions can actually estimate fees and estimate their costs of doing business. Lastly, it is also fork resistance. There will be a link later if you are interested in what that entails. There's some really cool blogs on the category.xyz website. I am also going to show this video here. This, I actually took a screenshot from earlier this morning, is a live view of the mainnet network. These are the 200 validators that are around the world. The lines here are indicating the communication of votes and proposals across the globe. So this is, again, a real-time view just like 4 hours ago. Next is the stack of building blocks. As we mentioned, there's a whole slew of infrastructure that's needed to actually support a full payment rail. First and foremost, I do want to touch upon the agentic payment stack. We're probably entering an era where we will be seeing more and more agents on chain. Adopting payment standards that are friendly to agents is the first step to making sure that this environment, that the Monad blockchain is fit for agentic payment use cases. That includes things like X402, includes things like ERC 8004 and MPP, which was recently announced and launched last week. But there's also over 200 infrastructure deployments on Monad right now. This is not counting apps. This is literally just the infrastructure deployments. 90 of them are across the payments, on-ramps, asset issuance, stablecoin issuance. And as a quick view, hopefully this works. I tried doing it on 2x. Oh yeah, okay, it's kind of going at 2x. This is a view of all of the different integrations that are on Monad right now to help support the future of payments on chain. I'm gonna skip it. Lastly, being the first mover. How do we graduate from proof of concept to use cases in production? There's a couple of areas that Monad has grown in these efforts already. I highlighted a couple here. There's an institutional private credit vault that was recently launched with Valos and Accountable doing the on-chain verification. Has a $200 million vault cap. Etherfuse, along with Shinhan Securities, also issued KTB, which is the Korean stablecoin, stable bond, on chain. on Monad, along with several other prominent chains. And Mento is bringing on board institutional-grade FX markets. Great examples of not just proof of concepts, but things in practice and production. But still the missing piece is finding the first movers for payments more holistically. Because payments is just one piece of what's being built. We've talked about the institutional credit, FX, on-chain order books, RWA issuance. It's clear what the benefits of on-chain payments can be. And Monad can bring the infrastructure, but it's not enough. So if you're building something towards a view of on-chain finance, on-chain payments, if you're also building towards this future of the 5-second rule and resolving it, let's talk, because I would love to resolve it together. As promised, there's a couple of links that I referenced throughout the deck here. Also, if you want to follow along with the progress of Monad Foundation and the Monad blockchain, monad.xyz, as well as Twitter. And I am Eunice Giarta, co-founder and GM of Monad Foundation. Thank you so much.